Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days of NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew, Keith Johnson.
The first duty is to the podcast.
Alan Seiler.
Doing this podcast is the cost of living.
And Veronica Danchel.
Hi.
And we're joined by some special guests again this week, Elaine Sweatman and Matt Sweatman. Welcome, guys.
Welcome back.
Hey,
Yes,
Sweatman.
thank you.
Take two.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, last week was interesting. We lost Charles and Veronica, and then like a few minutes in, Alan and I were here, and then we lost Matt and Elaine. And
It was like, remember me. I thought it was going to be just one of you by the end.
Why didn't I think of that last
that's
week?
the better, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
wasn't here.
would have
the
been
funny
amazing.
thing was, I was like, well, I guess we got to bag the show. And Alan goes, no, we could just talk about some stuff and people could ask some
Yeah.
questions. And we made an hour, no problem. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really would have worked if Alan pretended like he didn't remember us, and it was like, what are you talking about, Keith?
You know, I wish I were smarter and could think of things like that on the spot, because that would have been amazing had that happened.
Yeah.
All right. Alan, do we have some news this week?
Boy, do we have news this week, because the Star Trek people have released the full list of episode titles for season 3 of Strange New Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And they are. Episode 1 is Hegemony Part 2, which of course we knew that was going to happen.
Right.
Episode 2 is called Wedding Bell Blues.
Okay.
Episode 3 is Shuttle to Kinfori. Episode 4, A Space Adventure Hour.
That's going to be the retro looking one.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's the one. Episode 5, Through the Lens of Time.
Okay.
Episode 6, The Selot Who Ate Its Tail.
Okay.
I'm excited about that one for some reason. Number 7, this is a weird one. Episode 7, What is Starfleet? ? That's so interesting. I'm very intrigued by that one.
Yeah.
Episode 8, 4.5 Vulcans. And I'm sure that's the Vulcan hijinks episode
It's
that
gotta
we've
be.
seen in the
Yeah.
trailers.
Right.
Yeah.
Episode 9 is Terrarium. And episode 10, New Life and New Civilizations.
That one had better
Ooh.
deliver. Because I'm always
Yeah.
talking about how this show needs more like Strange New Worlds. Like that one had better be about new life and new civilizations.
Yeah, but at the same time, they better not make that the only one that does
Right.
it. And
I
save
wonder-
it for the last one.
I wonder if what is Starfleet is kind of like our recent discussion about what is Star Trek. What do we call Star Trek? I wonder if they're trying to defining what they are.
I was going to say that sounds like a title of one of your podcasts. Like this
Yeah.
week you were talking about what is Starfleet?
Yes.
It probably will be.
Yes, you will.
Write that down.
Well, my brain went, what is brain? But
Starfleet.
Brain,
Starfleet.
brain.
What is
Yeah.
Starfleet?
You know, was there not a Shakespearean title in there? Wow.
No.
Fascinating. No Shakespearean and no Latin.
Yeah. Unless Shakespeare was into Salots.
Or unless Terrarium has a Latin root. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
All the bases are covered.
Do we have any more news?
You have some.
I do, because there was an update a week or so ago from XO6, and I've talked about on the show before that both XO6 and Master Replicas, both overseas based, they're both like England based collectible companies, have been struggling with this tariff situation.
Yeah.
And so they had both halted all shipments to the U.S., halted pre-orders until there was a little more clarity. Well, XO6 has now introduced a new policy. They're going to resume shipments to the U.S. With the caveat that shipments to the U.S. are going to take longer because there's more checkpoints now than there used to be. But also U.S. customers will have an additional $14.50 charge to cover the tariff costs.
Wow.
And now this whole situation has been ever evolving. So that could change before we're done recording tonight. Who knows? But as of right now, at least those collectible companies are in the works. You know, like Master Replicas, I haven't seen an update from them yet. I've been a little bit busy, so I haven't been watching for it though. But all I want is my Playmate scale Old Man Worf. And if Civilization could just hold on long enough for me to get Old Man Worf, I'll be happy.
Nice.
All right. Keith, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still. Can you hear me?
Yes. We
we can't see you.
Yeah. I stopped my camera on purpose. I'm having to do some corrections here real quick.
Okay.
One thing I thought about, Charles, you said that we've talked about this before, is when we look into the Star Trek future, someday everybody will have a true home. What's the thing that makes stuff?
Replicator.
Not a replica. Well, we have 3D printer, right? We'll have something like that. And so you think in the future, it won't be tariffs. If you pay, you'll pay for a pattern. You'll get it online and you can make anything you want in your home. Of course, we ain't even close to being there yet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. One day, they'll figure out a way to add fees onto it.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the replicators will break, so you'll have your replicator repairman, and they'll be just like they'll come into your house with their butt crack showing, and
Oh, wow.
All right, Keith, do we have any This Week in Trek this week, or do we want to dive in with the Sweatmans?
We're going to dive in.
All right. So
Sweet.
I missed last week. I did hear it, but did you guys want to pick up where you left off talking about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 5?
I think we should repeat everything we said last week.
Word for word.
I think you guys are just getting into what you thought about the season versus the others, and what did you like about the overall tone? And Elaine, this is all new to you, right?
Yeah, it's all new to me. I like this season. As I said last week, it took us a lot longer to watch season 5 than all of the other seasons, but that was because we had issues with a tree falling on our house and having to move into another house for 6 months and then moving back home, and schedules got all out of whack and all of that stuff. So but no, I enjoyed this season, and then looking back I was kind of like, okay, now I remember that episode. That was a good one. And so I didn't really have any that I absolutely hated. I have a couple that are but I mean, I wouldn't be upset if I was watching them again.
Right.
Yeah. So
I'm rarely upset when I'm watching Star Trek, though.
Yeah.
Let's
How
code
about
of
you?
honor.
How about you, Matt? Because you've seen it before. How did it go revisiting?
Well, the thing about this season is after they resolved the cliffhanger, they kind of pulled away from the big Klingon stories and the other ongoing storylines. So they sort of told a lot more self-contained stories, a lot more emotional content, a lot more maybe adult, thoughtful. At the time when I was a young man, I missed having more of those type of episodes because I liked all that, Klingons and epic and that's what are they going to do next? But that these created so many ideas between Darmok and the Inner Light. I mean, these episodes have really held up in ways that maybe some of the more fan-wakey episodes, were have not held up as well over time.
Good point.
Now, Elaine, I have a question for you because you have seen all of Lower Decks.
yes.
So you are familiar with the Temerians from that. But now that you've seen Darmok, which is where that comes from, what was your impression of Darmok?
Even though I had seen that Lower Deck episode, I think I may have been also even more familiar with it just from memes and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was not completely unaware going into that episode, but I did enjoy watching Picard try to figure out how to communicate and then put follow the dots and be like, oh, metaphors. Okay, this just kind of like, okay, I can do this. And so like he kind of got to tap into his Shakespearean acting past, in his, and get into that. So yeah, but it was nice to actually finally see the actual movement, not just
real life.
Not animated, not in a meme,
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
And there was a big addition early in season 5. We got a new crew member, Ensign Rowe. I mean, what did you think about Ensign Rowe as an addition to the show, but also just as a character?
Are you asking me? Am I getting off the The first episode that she was in, Ensign Rowe, I was not super fond of her at first. I don't know she seemed a little rough.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was part of the whole thing for her to, but as the series goes on, I grew, I like her now. And plus she found her place. She figured out how to be on the Enterprise without ruffling, not that you shouldn't ruffle feathers, but she figured out how to, be with everybody. Yeah.
Elaine, one of my favorite scenes in all the track, to the point you're making, is when Troy and Crusher walk over to her and say, "You mind if we sit here?" Yes.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that's what she brought to the equation. Because you had a crew of prim and proper Starfleet officers. Everybody was so professional, so relatable and friendly, and however you want to say. She came in with a very different attitude. And not that she's any less effective an officer. And the fact is, I think that's what she had to prove. But that she does get under people's skin. She's not there to necessarily make friends and go hang out with the guys at Risa or whatever. She's there because she's lived a hard life and she's done things. And and she's had a big setback in her job, and she's trying to rebuild her career. And so she's very no nonsense. And I think it really does contrast with the regular cast members.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Elaine.
I was going to say, even you have Worf, who's kind of grumpy, if you will, but that he's really solid in his Klingon-ness, and that's where it comes from. Where Ro, it sort of just seemed like she had this big chip on her shoulder, y'all aren't going to like me anyway, so I'm not going to even try. But then you can tell, the episode where her and Geordi are invisible. Hang on one second. The next phase. She finally, she figures out how to work with, we need to, instead of butting heads arguing all the time,
right?
Kind of like she and Troy did when she wanted to separate the saucer. And, she figured out, you can get a little further with honey than vinegar. So let's just try that approach. And,
I also think that with Ensign Ro, it also gives Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard to expand his character and how it shows how he knows how to manage people. Because you like these people, but Geordi and Riker, they come off as a little bit almost elitist. Because I love the line when she says, Picard asks her why she's there. She goes, "Well, be honest, beach jail." And Riker gets really offended. "There are people waiting forever to get on the Enterprise. He's like, how dare you?" Right. And Picard, I love that Picard knows how to handle her. Like when she first met him, she walks out and then he goes, "Dismissed." But, that's a good leader because she is rough around the edges. And I like the scene when Guinan, when they're talking about her, and Guinan's like, "Oh, this is somebody I think I want to know." Because they're like, "She doesn't belong here. She doesn't belong in the Enterprise." And Guinan's like, "Oh, troublemaker. Let me go talk to her." But I just love the way it shows the kind of manager or leader Picard can be, because it's really easy to, you got to be this spit shine person. Picard's like, "No, let me work with her."
Right. Yeah. And they had done sort of a similar thing in season 2 when Pulaski came on board to replace Dr. Crusher.
Yeah.
And she was a little more abrasive and had a little more conflict with the crew than Dr. Crusher had.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that Ensign Ro is more or less successful than Pulaski had been?
More successful.
Okay.
From what I've seen so far. Because, from my biggest thing is I don't really think she had the one big prejudice Dr. Pulaski had against Data.
Right. Yeah.
Though if she had any, it would just sort of maybe because something was new or she didn't quite understand it. It wasn't Data isn't it. No, that's a him. It's that for me makes a difference.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it helps too that Ensign Ro is a little more original when Pulaski was more of a McCoy clone. So she's a fresher character. If anything, not that Kira Nerys isn't a great character in her own right. She was, at least initially, attended because she took the place of what Ro's intended role was on Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Get a little ahead of ourselves, but
but not much.
Right.
Yeah.
Not much at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An
episode. Go ahead. No, I was gonna say an episode I loved early in season 1 or season 5. I'm sorry, is Disaster.
Yes.
I think that's just a fantastic episode, and it's
I
like
agree.
great character pieces going on.
Yeah.
Different parts of the ship. What did you guys think of Disaster?
It gave a good opportunity for, was it Troy?
Yes.
Man of the Bridge. So it was a good Troy episode, and those are very rare. So that's a good aspect to it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elaine, you said something I hadn't really thought about looking at the thing when you said that this was really more character related shows, and there were a whole lot of kind of really standalone episodes this season, and they're just wonderful with characterizations. Like you said, Cause and Effect. I love Cause and Effect. I love Picard. I'm not Cause. Was it Disaster? Is what you said? Disaster. I love Disaster with Picard with the kids, and and Geordi with Beverly. Just little matches you don't always see. Riker and Data, and of course the whole thing with Troy on the bridge. That's just one of the. I have always heard, and I know, Charles, you're a manager and other people, I have always heard that the best leaders sometimes feign confidence when they don't feel it. That's part of it. Troy had no idea of knowing that the guest was right. But I love the way she snapped Ro down, because at the end of the day, she is the commander. Ro's like, her, and when she finally gets her back up, Ro's like, okay, yes, ma'am. If you die, it's on you. If we die, it's on you. But hey.
Well, the great thing about Disasters is a lot of people who are outside of their comfort zones.
Yes.
Like Troy, Picard, Worf, who are having to rise to the challenge. I think that's a fun examination of the characters, is seeing them do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do.
Yeah. I 100% agree. That's my favorite thing about this episode.
Yeah.
And I think it's. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it proved that it's a bit of a myth that Picard's not good with children, or that he doesn't like children. He has a certain manner with them, but it seems like kids relate to him and aren't offended by it. So I think he did very well with his squad of kids in this episode.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that also shows how much he's mellowed since the beginning of season 1.
Right.
He has really grown into that role and has really become comfortable with that presence on the ship. And, it took some adjustment for him, and understandably so, because he's used to warships and exploration ships. He's not necessarily used to a big flying hotel.
Yeah.
That's a good part, Alan, because when they first got it, he was very stern, and he did what he thought he did what he would usually do with an adult officer. He basically tells them sternly, "We're going to get out of this, and don't panic." And they start crying again. That's a great scene. Like, well, crap, that didn't work.
Alan's saying that. I'm picturing Captain Stubing in Picard, him on a cruise ship, captain of a cruise ship.
All right, we got a comment from our buddy Mark, who says, Ro got time to fit in. Picard gave Lieutenant Barclay enough rope and told Geordi he was his project.
Right.
Yeah. Picard knows how to develop people. He really does.
There's so many key episodes in this season that I want to talk about, and I know we're not going to be able to get to them all, but I want to jump to, because I kind of want to get it out of the way so we can talk about other things. But the big center point of this season, and the ones that were sort of the anchors for the November's sweep period, are the unification two-parter, where we get Sarek back and we get Spock again. So I want to hear your reactions to those two episodes.
Oh, me, because
either one of you.
Well, no, I really enjoyed seeing Spock back, because he may be my favorite. I really like him, and I did love the scene with him and Data, how they're different but not different, but they're like, it's kind of like, well, how do you decide if you're human or Vulcan, or how do you reconcile that?
That was a sweet scene.
Do you like Spock more than Space Daddy?
It's a different thing. But the question probably should be, do I like Leonard Nimoy or Ethan Peck?
Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy. It is Leonard Nimoy.
Are you talking about the person or the actor?
Even Ethan Peck would make that choice.
Right.
Yes, he would.
So true.
I feel like I'd have more fun hanging out with Ethan Peck.
You're right. That's a great conversation when Spock. I love the conversation when Spock tells Data, you basically have a long life, physical superiority, no emotions. you have achieved basically what every Vulcan wants to do. And then, of course, Data on the other side is, well, why, by the fact that you're kind of sort of tapping into emotions, and humans have emotions, that's what I want to be. And I think that's a fascinating thing to look at with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a chance to see what's on the other side of the fence. You know, like, okay, that's what I want to be, but that's what I want to be. So, you know.
Well, and Data was kind of the Spock of the Next Generation. So it was a great opportunity to show how different they are and how alike they are at the same time.
Yeah.
Do you think Spock was well used?
For the second episode, I do wish he had been able to be more in the first episode, but he was just like
now,
like dun, dun, dun. But I know that was a cliffhanger and what
exactly,
and that's I wasn't, you know.
The first time it aired, I was watching it with some friends, and people they kept saying, "Where's Spock?"
Right,
like, you know he's not going to show up until the cliffhanger. Come on, you know how television works.
I know.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say. I was going to say that. I was going to say that one of the details in the Unification two-parter that I think I pick up more beyond the Spock and the return of whoever Denise Crosby's playing this week, it's the idea that there is remnants of Vulcan culture in the underground of Romulan society.
Yeah.
To me, I have to imagine the correlation in real life might be like the North and South Korea, where you have one side living under such oppression, disconnected from, isolated from the rest of the galaxy in this case, and then one side which is an open, free society that interacts with the free world, but they have this common lineage, and there's got to be this desire to connect on some level and get past all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good point, Matt.
All right. I got another comment from Mark. He says, I have been told you can see a reflection of a cameraman in Selah's desk in Unification.
Yes.
I have looked and looked and can see nothing. Anyone else aware of this?
It is true. Yes. In the when they originally aired it and they were walking out, you can see a dude sitting and he's obviously chewing gum. I mean, he's staring at it. He is chewing, and you can see the reflection clear as day. Wow. I think they probably edited it out now whenever you see it. But yes, Mark, that is absolutely the case. I saw it back in the day.
That's a good point. It might be gone from the remastered episodes.
Could be. Yeah, most likely it is, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just like they have to take out the Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. And the car in the distance in Lord of the Rings. Stuff like that always happens. Okay, so 3 of the things that I love in season 5 is I love when Star Trek, and they do it more in the latter half of the series, but I love it when they do like mystery episodes, when they present something up front that you have to spend the episode figuring out. And I feel like there's 3 of them really good ones in the second half of this season, and that's Conundrum, Power Play, and Cause and Effect.
Love it. Love them all.
Oh my, I love those episodes so much because it throws you a curveball at the beginning and you're like, what is going on? The best one being Cause and Effect, when it starts with the Enterprise being destroyed.
Right.
Oh, yes.
And you think, okay, so the first time I saw this, I was like, okay, that's fine. It's the setup. We're going to backtrack, when after the credits roll, we're going to go back and see how it goes. But then you get to that first commercial break and it ends at the same point with the Enterprise blowing up. And I'm like,
what is happening?
I was so engaged.
Right.
Oh. It was so directed by Jonathan Frakes, right?
Directed by Jonathan Frakes, his first directorial duties. Yes.
His skill is just, I agree. Now, what I love about that episode too is I've read like some of the making of, they talked about all the different angles they have to do. Because you notice the Enterprise blows up at a different angle every time. It's great.
Well, but that's the cool thing about it though. See, because you could easily, and you would expect the episode to just repeat the footage from before and just shoot the little variations each time. But even the scenes that are exactly the same from one loop to the next, he shoots from different angles, and and he came up with some really interesting angles that no other director did, like shooting the conference room from above. Shooting somebody was sitting on the operating table and he shot them from below looking up. It was so interesting.
And I think though that The Offspring in season 3 was his first directing on Star Trek.
Was it?
Frakes.
Am I remembering it wrong?
I love that one.
I think so, but I'm doing this from
love
memory,
that one.
so we'll see after the show.
No, I'm sure you're right.
But he has great things. He almost has a Twilight Zone type of aesthetic when they start doing the cards and they keep calling out the cards as they're playing, and then the camera zooms in on their faces. I mean, I agree with you. It's a great suspenseful.
I love that episode so much.
That's a really good one.
But Power Play, I love too, because you have 3 of your main crew members who are possessed by some alien presence.
Yeah.
And one of them is Data, who normally doesn't get this kind of thing because he's a machine. And O'Brien and Troy, who usually don't get featured in these kinds of roles. And it puts all 3 of our actors in really different situations. And I love it. I love that Troy gets the opportunity to be the alien commander who, kind of takes down Picard. I love that O'Brien gets to do something other than just beam people places. I love that episode.
Yeah. It's kind of disturbing in a way too, though, because they're like, and I don't mean this in a bad. All 3 of them are more mild mannered. They're the ones that are just I mean, they're important, but they're just there. They don't, rush out and start battling people, or Data may, but she's still an android, so that's not, But so kind of a little disturbing seeing, like, mind trippy, that all of a sudden they're like, it's kind of
yeah. To your point, the scenes with O'Brien abusing Keiko.
Right.
That was rough to watch. And at the end of it, when O'Brien's back himself and he says, "If I could have killed that thing in me," it's just such a conviction. Right. That was hard to watch.
Especially when he does something that's more disturbing I don't think he was going to assault her physically, or maybe, but when nothing was creepier when he was recalling an intimate moment, when he kept going, "Please," you said, it's like, oh God, that was disgusting. And she starts freaking out. But fortunately, what I love is the man who was in Troy. Remember, she said later on, he was thoughtful in a brutal sort of way. So he was a criminal, but he wasn't that kind of criminal, which Alan, I love that episode. I don't know if y'all know, but in real life, Marina Sirtis really, really, really wanted to do her own stunt. She was so excited to do her own stunt. So when the storm came in and they all jumped back, she did that. And of course, she landed badly and she broke her tailbone.
Yep. I remember.
That's why you have stunt people.
I had totally forgotten about that. But yes. I did know that.
And the 10 forward takeover is phenomenal. There's this one scene, Alan, you were talking about camera. There's this weird angle kind of sort of below into the side of Deanna. And I love Marina Sirtis, and she loved it too. She's got this cold look on her face, and I love it. She's just methodically shooting people. Just bam, bam. That's such a great scene, that takeover. Wonderful show.
Yeah. An earlier one that jumps out to me, backing up just a little bit, is the game. I think that's an episode that just holds up really well.
It does.
Where the crew gets obsessed with this stupid little game. And just having now lived into the modern age, if you ever have to be around somebody who plays phone games, that is very relatable. Someone is hypnotized by this stupid thing.
I thought it was super cheesy at the time, but I feel like it has a bit more relevance now.
Right.
It does. Well, and I think it's funny that it's the kids that figure it out, which is true of today. Like you think about, like our parents trying to use technology and they have no idea what they're doing. And it's like, I pushed this. Well, how did you get that on your phone? I don't know. I just pushed this and now I'm watching it, and so kids have to come and say, "Give me that," and fix it, or so it is much more relevant today than it was then.
As a number of episodes are this year. A lot of them are pretty prescient. I mean, Darmok. I mean, that's describing things in memes and GIFs. Right. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Where everything is a reference to something.
Yeah. Oh, that's something that my son. If anytime I say something, I don't even know that I've said. And he's like, "Is that a reference?" I'm like, "A reference to what?" And it could be, I said, "Billy Bob." Is that a reference? I don't know to what. So he's all about the references.
I mean, that could be an early criticism of modern Star Trek, where everything now has to be a reference to something on Star Trek. You can't have new things anymore.
Right.
But Charles, what you're saying about the game is funny because it is a cheesy show. Because there's no way to say it. Some of those people are acting almost orgasmic when they are.
Yeah.
And like that one lady, when she goes, Wesley, you know what the secret is? Just like, holy crap, what is going? And Will Wheaton has this smile. He's like, thanks, I'll try it. I got to get out of here.
Well, that look on Ashley Judd's face when they analyze it and they realize what part of the brain that it's stimulating. She's got that look on her face like, oh yeah, I know what's happening with them.
Right.
That's a funny one.
Well,
Is that the same episode where Troy's eating chocolate and describing why chocolate is yummy?
I don't think
No,
so.
that's a different episode.
I think it's a different. Oh yeah, she.
That's one of my favorite Troy scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vote Troy and chocolate, but I don't remember what scene where that's from.
Well, speaking of Troy, I'm a big old Troy fan, and I feel like season 5 is a really good Troy season because she gets, she gets to be in command of the Enterprise for an episode, and she gets taken over by an alien and gets a real power role in that one. Yeah. She, she has a couple of really good ones, but then there's Violations, where she is assaulted by a telepathic alien.
I forgot that one.
That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a creepy one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, they went to that well too many times, I think, with Troy.
Oh, I agree.
Oftentimes, she was being violated by some telepathic alien.
Right.
Yeah, but
which is weird. You would think that the telepathic aliens would not go up against another telepath. They would pick someone less psychically able to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it is the writer's room. They're thinking, all right, what I know about Troy, the telepath.
Yeah.
She's and like afraid to think outside the box,
and
like they struggle, I think, to come up. Where I think Disaster, I think, was a fantastic episode for Troy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a disturbing one because the guy, to your point about that, it was very disturbing because he'd make people relive some events you wouldn't want to relive the way he did that. Yeah, that was really kind of creepy. I've always kind of been the person, like, when you always have that conversation, kids and even adults have, what superpower would you want? Telepathy is actually one of the last powers I would ever want to have. I don't want to know what people are thinking. I don't. And I'd be nervous around telepaths. There's been some shows there's been some shows like there was an episode of Voyager. Remember, there was that race that was afraid of telepaths. I'm not saying, or of course, Babylon 5. I'm not saying you should ever do that, but I could see why you'd be uncomfortable with a telepath hanging out all the time. That would make
100%.
Sure.
Yeah.
The fact that they let her play poker with them blows my mind.
I know we've said this before, but Riker plays poker with an android, a guy with special vision who can see through the cards, an empath. He also wins.
The ultimate card counter.
Be a good player,
right?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Now, Elaine, you saw the season finale of Lower Decks, season 4. Where Nick Locarno comes back. Before you saw the First Duty.
Yes.
So did that inform your viewing of the First Duty at all, or did you put that together?
No, I mean, it didn't change, and it didn't affect anything. I knew he was from a TNG episode, and then I think Matt had said, "Remember, in Lower Decks, you're going to see that guy." Okay, cool. So that was about it, but I didn't like him.
No.
I was like, you were like the typical 80s bully. You are like what's
Johnny
his
Lawrence.
name in the Karate Kid? You just I don't like you. You are the stereotypical 80s 90s bully. And West fell for it, and it's like, dude, you know better than that.
And what makes him dangerous, and I'm not going to call out real life, what makes him dangerous is he's a good-looking, charismatic man, and I think he's a borderline sociopath because he has no real morals. Because then, like, I think the thing that really disturbs me in that entire episode is when he gathers the whole group there and he goes, "Hey, Josh was having problems. None of us wanted to say it, but he was having problems." And then Wesley's like, "Whoa, you want us to do this to this our dead teammate. That's just that's rotten. That's just rotten.
Yeah, no, he was.
Yeah, we talked about Lower Decks is going to have an episode called "What is Starfleet," but I think this episode, Strange New Worlds,
more Lower Decks,
right? I think this episode does a really good job of examining what is Starfleet, like what does it mean to be in that service, and it's not just being the best pilot; it's there's a moral and ethical obligation.
Right. Yeah. And I love Picard's speech when with the whole thing. You know, it's become a meme sometimes. The first duty is to the truth. Whatever that truth is. And I love when he tells Wesley, if you can't do it, then get out. It's a great episode. And I think one of the things I found very interesting is that was the introduction to Boothby, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say my favorite Martian.
Yeah. Now he's my favorite groundskeeper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a comment from Erica Laurie, who I just heard from last night when we were doing our live Doctor Who review. She chimed in there too. So Erica says, I do love the Temerian language because it is at once meditation on how community storytelling strengthens cultural identity while simultaneously rendering that culture impenetrable to outsiders.
Yeah.
Ooh, well said.
Ooh, baby, that's good analysis right there.
Yeah, I agree with that because one of the things they talked about is the Tamarians have less of a sense of individual identity than we may have because some of that has kind of been subsumed in their mythos because again, if everybody thinks exactly like that and that's how they speak, they're not kind of individual like we are, especially in the Western world. So I do find that very interesting. I've always wondered how did that language evolve? Because at some point in time, they had to have just regular language where they say, yeah, I want a burger. You know, and then, then let's say McDonald's, the sign on or something like that. So I don't know how that happened.
McDonald's 8 billion served.
Yeah.
The milkshake machine broken.
Yeah.
Oh god!
But, you know, Elaine, given how you characterize this, for some reason I never thought about it. It's such a character-driven season. What? I mean, just freaking phenomenal acting from late Paul Winfield and Patrick Stewart. Oh my god! The story of Gilgamesh, and then the guy dies as he's telling the story. I
hated that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is a fantastic episode, and I feel like we're at a point now where Next Gen. And I think we started to see that in season 4, but Next Gen knows it's in a position where it can do basically anything. They can stretch their format. They can tell any kind of story. They can tell unexpected things that really take the audience by surprise. I think that this is the point where Next Gen has really become a unique Star Trek show and really unique for anything that was happening on television at the time.
Yeah, and also a lesson for our times and any time is I love Picard says at the end with Riker, he says the Tamarian captain was willing to risk his life just for the chance to say hello. Can we do any less? I love that lesson. It is just amazing. Another thing I love about that episode, I love this when this happens, when they have that battle at the end. Data says we can't survive another attack from their ship. That means those people are super powerful because they were about to destroy the Enterprise. And I just love, and I also love what he said there when Riker says, "New friends, Captain." He goes, "I'm not sure, but at least not new enemies."
Yeah,
that's all you can ask for.
That was a very Kirk-like line there.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we never saw them again. I mean, until Lower Decks, of course.
Because it played a little bit. Well, obviously, he's played for humor on Lower Decks. I agree. Now, I would like to have seen a more serious treatment of what happened.
Right.
I would imagine that would be kind of a hard episode to write because you really, I mean, as the writers of that, you really have to think about your wordplay and if you're able to get your point across. Speaking like that, like it that would be,
Well, it's a really great example of why Star Trek is so good on television because it's very much like a stage play. Like you could do that on stage, and it's just a sci-fi story with a few actors. And yes, there's like the various crews you see on the ships, but you really could do that story with just very few actors and really just the two. And I mean, just tell an interesting, parable about communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to jump ahead much, but we see the ultimate and perfect example of that in just a couple of years' time at the end of DS9 season 1 with Duet, which is literally a stage play.
Right.
And anyway, Elaine, you'll get there soon.
Yeah.
You will love it. Okay, so let me get some comments here, because Mark, going back to Nick Locarno, Mark says that in the end, Locarno did take full responsibility for the accident.
Yeah, once caught.
Once caught.
Yeah.
The part of me wants to say, but did he though?
Yeah.
He took his opportunity to be a noble martyr, and once he was found out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And our buddy Wayne
Hey, Wayne.
says, I had a problem with Starfleet, back to the Temerians. I had a problem with Starfleet not being able to figure out that language. And are we talking about the universal translator?
Right, because I think that they could understand the language. It was really just the context they were missing. What I think is sort of the takeaway from the episode is that you can understand what they're saying, but if you don't understand their cultural context, then you don't really understand what they're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was this is one of the biggest string crosses you'll ever hear. But in the opening, the debut of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air TV series, when Will Smith's character goes to his aunt and uncle, they ask him, "How was your flight?" He goes, "It was dope. It was crazy." He goes, "What?" "It was stupid. It was this." He goes, "What?" And he goes, "It was really neat." And the context of the words has changed. So that's it. Yeah.
I did not have Fresh Prince of Bel-Air mentioning on my bingo card for tonight.
I know, right?
I'm imagining that intro in Temerian.
Yes.
Oh, you're right.
Really, really quickly, our buddy Bill Lamond says, "Hi, sorry I'm late. For once, not deep in an art project that I forgot you're live." So, Bill, thanks for joining us. It's great to see you.
Yeah, we've got under 20 minutes left, a few key episodes before we get sort of into the wrap-ups. But
I mean, what problem with season 5? There's so much stuff to talk about.
And like iBorg, which is an iconic episode.
Yes.
So tell us all how much you love iBorg.
If you want to go first, Matt?
No, you go.
Okay.
You go.
I came around to really liking it, but at the beginning, I kind of had to, I guess, like them, realize that Hughes had some humanity still left in him somewhere. Because at first I was like, he's just like a Cyberman. You can't reason with a Cyberman. But
I agree.
Doctor Who's Cyberman, there's no humanity left in Cybermen. But in him, if you take him away from the collective, he can start getting some of that back, which I had to like kind of come to that realization. Although I should have, because Picard got rescued, but you know,
that's a good point. You saw Hugh on Picard before you saw iBorg.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So
Although
Elaine
I don't.
There's a lot in this season that Elaine has done backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you pick up on that drone was Hugh from Picard, or did Matt tell you?
No.
Or did you know?
He told me, and I was like going, I don't remember. No, I didn't remember. I don't remember Hugh in Picard.
Okay.
At all. I don't.
Wow.
Elaine, Elaine, you say something very interesting. Several weeks and months ago, we had a discussion about the Borg, and Charles and I got into a little discussion about this. The Borg, as portrayed, say, in Voyager with Unimatrix Zero and Hugh here, I wouldn't have written it like that. I agree with you. I would have written that once the Borg co-opt you, they burn out anything approaching your personality because you don't need it, and it would not come back. I mean, you would literally be lobotomized.
Sure.
But that's the way they went, and it does work. And I actually love a little thing that's so funny is when Geordi gives him the feeding thing, he gets it, and then he goes, "You will be assimilated." Geordi goes, "That's gratitude for you." It's just it's a funny little line.
Yeah.
But what a powerful discussion about, is genocide ever justified?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they do a great job of turning the big monster of Next Gen into themselves victims. All of those drones are victims.
And they are,
Well, how do you mass murder a bunch of victims who are being controlled?
And one thing I really love about that episode is we've always seen Guinan kind of take up for the people that nobody else likes. Here it's the opposite. She's ready to kill it as a Borg, kill it kill it with fire. I mean, but she gets turned around on it. So it's kind of it's like the other side. She's usually the one turning everybody else around on someone. When Harris is the other side. That's very fascinating. She does have a prejudice. She does have a trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. Her people were basically wiped out by the Borg.
Every
Man,
time
I love that episode so much.
There's so many times when I look at Star Trek episodes like this, and I always think, what would the other great races do? And I'm always thinking, well, if this is a Klingon, they'd be dead. If this is the Romulans, they'd be dead.
That's a lot of Star Trek episodes.
Right, exactly. And not to spoil too much, Elaine, I hope this isn't a spoiler for you, but it's a real minor. But you will find out later on that Picard gets dressed down for not taking. I won't go too much, but let's just say there are some in Starfleet are like, I can't believe you didn't take the opportunity to genocide the Borg. And it's kind of like, well, what are we going to be if we do that? What will we become if we do that?
Well, but also Picard was part of the Borg at one point too. So I mean, that even though he came out of it, that's still in there somewhere. You know,
it's a good moral quandary because you can see both sides of it. Because I mean, if you're on a planet that gets destroyed by the Borg, I mean, you're not going to care that we had an opportunity a few years ago, but he was really sweet. You know?
Really quickly, Bill. Speaking of sweet, Bill just says that he loves seeing everyone and seeing so many faces to go with the voices that he loves.
Hey, thanks, Bill.
Oh, Bill, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
There's one that I really want to ask you guys about because it's one that I have very mixed feelings about, and that's the Outcast.
I had that. Yes.
That's a problematic episode.
Yes, but there was part of it in an odd sort of way that reminded me of in the Orville with
Oh yeah
with the Bartok, not Bartok at the back.
It's a composer also.
Well,
you're talking about the episode about a girl.
Yeah, where it was like, do they decide? You know, the one Borders. That's who I'm trying to think of. Borders is like, no, this is going to remain our daughter, and his husband's like, no, he's not. And so it kind of reminded me, sort of in a roundabout way, of that. Like this one who she wanted to have sexual feelings. She didn't want to be androgynous. And what do you do with that? But then that also kind of reminded me a little bit of the Masterpiece Society, where the one scientist was like, I want to do more science than this, what I've been programmed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then kind of spins into The Perfect Mate, where she was raised to be and bred to be this. Like those three kind of go together in a weird sort of
I agree.
feminist exploration thing. My words aren't working very well.
Well, all of them boil down to the right of the individual versus the right of the collective.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean that's an ongoing theme. Yeah.
Borg goes into that too. Then
collective, yes.
Alan, you said something interesting about that being a controversial show, because I think I mentioned this last week with Elaine, or maybe before with Elaine, is sometimes when, like Elaine and Charles has asked you, is you watch some of these episodes and it's not new to you because at least the themes and the ideas you've heard of, right? Like nobody can watch the best of both worlds in Star Trek, even if you've never seen it before, without knowing about the Borg. And so one of the things I think about, Alan, based on what you said, is sometimes when I look at TNG or even Deep Space Nine, I look at it now and I realize when it first aired, it was groundbreaking, it was daring, and it was 100% quote unquote open-minded.
Right.
Like Jonathan Frakes said, he would have hired him. If he'd done it again, he would have hired a man to play that character instead of a woman. But they didn't have the courage to do that.
Absolutely.
But so it's not always great, but I give them credit for trying at that time. You know, they have to grow into it.
Yeah, there are certainly ham-fisted elements of that episode, but I think that it's almost 40 years later, and I mean, there's still people who are facing consequences for gender and sexual nonconformity in our society.
Right, and I think it was incredibly bold to be done at the time it was done. And Erica says Soren's speech about being trans was so powerful.
Yeah.
And you had not heard anything quite like that on television at that time.
Right.
That's true. And as we speak, in my home state of Texas, there are still very active camps where people can send kids who are quote unquote wrong and try to program. That still goes on. You can still try to program them into not being what they are. So what they did to Soren at the end was, I don't even know what to say about it.
Yeah, it's so hard to watch.
It is.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a little commentary from Bill. He says, oh, wait, did I miss one? Anyway, he's talking about the problem of villains in science fiction. He says that the Borg and the Cybermen would only be individuals so old/disabled that they need cyber assists. And the real danger, they're all very old, and they all want to show you the photos of all their families.
Well, and Elaine, I think I love the way you're boxing some of these things, because the perfect mate. I love that episode, and of course, it's a very disturbing episode. But let's be honest, as we talk about this in 2025, there are societies where this is still done with women. Where heck, I mean, many modern nations, they still frankly breed people, as it were, to marry, for dynasty and for political thing. So it's a really weird episode. I wish there had been a little bit more of the conversation between Beverly and Picard. I love that conversation. Beverly is completely outraged, and Picard's like, it's not our call. That's their society. It's not our call.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Right.
Yeah, that's not one of my favorites, but it is fun to see Famke Janssen and Patrick Stewart on screen together before they were both X-Men.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
she was doing great, Veronica.
I saw the picture. As soon as you said they were on X-Men together, I knew immediately who it was.
The one thing I missed from that episode, which may have been too obvious, but I completely hate that Deanna Troi was not in that episode.
Yeah, that would have been.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? Beverly may have been able to get more of an understanding, because Troy would have been able to. They would have been able to do their empath thing together, and maybe Troy would have found a way to explain it. Better, so Beverly wouldn't be so offended by all of it.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're down to 7 minutes, and we've not mentioned the inner light yet. I think we're contractually.
Thank you, Charles. Yeah. Thank you. Got to get to that one.
Right. So what did you guys think of the inner light?
That was a very good episode.
A lot of people consider it the best episode.
Yeah.
Not
I can see that.
I wouldn't go that far. Best episode.
Well, no, I just said I could see that. That isn't.
I mean, it's held on the same level as like City on the Edge of Forever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very good, very original. There's no episode like it. Very emotional. The music, the flute. It hits on all its cylinders. It's just somehow it's too condensed, I think. I mean, it's really a massive tale, the life of him on this planet. And, we skip, seems like decades in some of the, scene, acts to acts. It's like it needs another 15 minutes to really tell that story. And you could do that with a streaming show. Back then you had to fit it into the 1 hour with the ads. So I think in a modern series at streaming where I could go 65 minutes this episode. I think they could have done it a little bit better.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it makes its point and it tells its story. But
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
No, done.
I think for me, and Alan and I discussed this recently, I think Alan and I feel the same way. Many times, an episode of Star Trek or something, the ending and the resolution, the reveal is so awesome that it flows together and it's powerful.
Yeah.
This is an episode where it's okay throughout the bulk of the episode. It doesn't really engage, but the ending is wonderful. But the 30 or 40 minutes before, with Picard raising his family stuff, it's just kind of fine. So when I do get the reveal is fine, but the 30 or 40 minutes of him just on that planet doesn't really engage me all that much, which is why for me, it's not the best ever. But Charles is right. So many people put this as like the best of the best. And I see why they feel that way. I just don't feel that way about it.
Yeah, it kind of plays into this trope. They do that on Star Trek sometimes, where they'll have the main character playing somebody else for an episode.
Right.
And I mean, he's still playing Picard the whole time, but it's like Picard in another life, and he becomes more Kanan over the course of the episode,
Right.
just because he's living Kanan's life for so long.
Yeah.
But then snaps back and has to be Picard again. But again, then they don't deal with the consequences of him having lived 50 years of another life,
Yeah.
and having to be like, which button does which on my console,
Exactly. Oh, that's the really disappointing thing about that, and about the format of the show at that time.
Yeah.
Okay, couple of comments about this. Mark says the Inner Light was a great episode. However, an encyclopedia of these people's history instead of one man's memory might have been a better use of resources.
Yeah.
And Erica says one of my favorites is when Picard plays duets with the woman he was interested in. They make beautiful music together.
Coming later, Elaine. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah,
that's
the flute makes a comeback, Elaine. Just in case you didn't pick up on that.
I want to say this real quick, but I may have said this on the show before. I don't remember. But during COVID, I was an essential worker, but I was assigned to be outside the office, and I was not allowed to come into my office for 2 years. I had to do my entire job, and some employees were stationed in the office. But then one day it was like, okay, restrictions lifted, come back on the office. So I had to walk back into my office and sit down at my old desk and just pick up like I'd never stopped.
Yeah.
And it was super weird. Like, do I hit 9? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
It was very strange. And I can't imagine 50 years later coming back into my office and being like, oh, okay, I guess I just pick up where I left off.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have a couple of minutes, and I really want to get to the season finale, the first half of Time's Arrow, where we find Data's head in San Francisco.
And a watch.
And I love Time's Arrow. I don't think it's the strongest of the two-parters and the season ending ones, but I think it's more consistent than a lot of them. It tells a better story, and I absolutely love it. So I'm really curious to know what you think of the first half of this storyline and where you think it might go from here.
I really liked it. And I actually, Matt doesn't know this, I rewatched it a second time at work because I was like, going, wait a minute, which one was it? And so I'm like, it's a season finale 2-part. I need to, the first part. So I rewatched it.
You watch Star Trek without me? No!
But no, because it was like, I was like, okay, I remember this. Okay, I remember this. Okay, I remember this. But I really loved how Data just sort of figured out how to fit right in. And it's a time travel episode, and all of a sudden he's back where Mark Twain is, and he just was kind of like, okay, I'll figure out how to do this. Oh, money? Oh, I know how to play poker. Let's do this. But then he thinks Guinan time traveled, and it's like, I don't know who you are. And so it's kind of like it's a time travel mystery. So I like mysteries, so that that fits. I like it.
I can't wait till you see the second half.
And I don't know anything about the second half. So
Well, neither did they when they wrote the first half.
Well,
one of the things I like about it is we were just talking about Data earlier when Data was when Data and Spock were talking. Data talks about how he wants to be more quote unquote human. I love it when he's talking to Riker and he basically says, I have noticed that people, I'm paraphrasing, I've noticed that people are uncomfortable around me, somewhat uncomfortable silence around me. And then Riker is basically like, dude, you ought to be freaking out. And Data is basically like, well, I know I'm mortal. And now for me, I'd be freaking out. I like to think I'd like to live forever, but Data is like, there's some comfort knowing my life will come to an end because it shows I'm mortal like everyone else. That's a heck of a mindset, of a philosophy, I guess. I don't know if everybody can have that, but I found that very interesting. And Charles, you mentioned the watch earlier real quick. What's so funny every time I watch that episode is, remember when they're telling Picard all the stuff in the cave? They don't lead with Data's head. Right? Hey, we found this. Oh, and the head of your first officer. Right. You might have led with that, dude.
About that, Bill asks, is it a Timex? Was it still ticking? And he also says that Matt and Elaine, you are such a cute couple.
Thank you.
Yes.
We like him pretty well, I gotta say.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of season 5 overall compared to, you've seen seasons 1 through 5 now of Next Gen.
Yeah.
How does it hold up?
This may be my favorite season if I'm thinking about it, because the only episode that I really was kind of like with a matter of time, the one that had Matt Fruit, I can't say his name, Brewer and the time traveling story, that was just sort of like, okay, it was an episode.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, but it wasn't bad, but it was just it's an episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, this was a really good season. So
yeah, and Matt.
Yeah, I think I appreciate it more because than I was as a younger fan, because I wasn't as hungry for the big epic, dramatic, mega storyline episodes. Now I can appreciate the more personal stories, so I can appreciate the season on a much higher level than I could back then.
Right.
So it holds up very, very well.
Man, I think this season is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought of season 3 as being sort of peak Star Trek, but I've really come around in recent years to how great 5 is, and it may be the best season, even though 2 of my very favorite Next Gen episodes are in season 6, including my favorite Troy episode.
Ooh.
Wow.
All right. Well, Matt and Elaine, where can people find more of you?
You can find us on Elaine and Matt Watch TV. We're on Facebook and Blue Sky. And you want me to talk about the other place you can find me? Or leave that? You can also find me on Monkeying Around at Monkeying Around on Facebook and Blue Sky. We also have email, Monkeying Around
podcast.
Thank you. I hadn't said it in a while at gmail.com.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. And Keith, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
How about you, Alan?
Cosmic Creative, KOZMIC creative.com.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
That's right. And coming up soon, we'll be appearing at a convention for the first time in a while. At Metrotham, we'll be doing an all-ages show there. And then we've got a couple of library shows in July. So check that out at Felt Nerdy across social media, or Felt Nerdy and Dirty if you like our adult material. And where else can people find us?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
Yeah, you might see Elaine there too.
Yeah.
And do you have a closing for us this week?
Your head is not an artifact.
Perfect. Join us live on Thursday evenings. We'll be talking about legacy Star Trek topics until July, when Strange New Worlds starts back, and then we'll be talking about Strange New Worlds week to week for about 10 weeks. But we'll be live on YouTube at 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern, or you can find us after the fact on your favorite podcast platform. And thanks for joining us.
All right, everybody, have a great week.
Have a
See
good
you
one.
next Thursday.
Bye.